Good afternoon, everybody. So great to see you. Wow, how amazing. I'm very happy to be back at Tushita. I'm very happy to welcome all of you also to Tushita from my side. My name is Thubten Wangdu, and it's great to see you all on this very auspicious occasion of Saka Dawa. Today we celebrate all together the birth, enlightenment and parinirvana of Shakyamuni Buddha, and we have some time to remember together what the Buddha taught, what the Buddha has found out in his discovery about the nature of reality, what he found to be true. And we can check together a little bit if there's something useful for us here that we might want to work with in our own life with respect to the Buddha's teaching in order to develop our good qualities and bring greater happiness and benefit into our own lives and the lives of others. That's why we are here. It's so great you all came. And amazing. I'm always so happy to be here at Tushita. It's really an incredibly special place. I always enjoy it so much to sit here. I sat here for many, many times on this wooden platform here. And I'm always very happy to be invited here because I think Tushita is really a very, very special place in this world. A place that is extremely rare to be found in this world today, where Dharma wisdom and compassion really flourishes. So I think we're very lucky to be here together and spend some time together. So I would like to talk about what the Buddha taught today, which is a very big undertaking really, because the Buddha's teaching is incredibly vast and very, very profound. So it cannot be even remotely covered in one afternoon session, but we can try. Do we have space? Do we have space here? Maybe not, right? Maybe we can hand some cushions back, that people can have some cushions, if there are extra cushions. So today we can at least look a little bit at the basic message that the Buddha gave us. You know, what the Buddha has found to be true, and what the Buddha has taught to others, you know, about how to be truly happy, how to have more happiness in our own lives and be able to decrease our various emotional suffering, eventually achieving a state of full awakening, full enlightenment, a state of total absence of suffering in the mind, a state of true flourishing of inner peace and tranquility and happiness, which is what we all want, I guess, right? A state of true inner peace, true happiness is what we wish for. Probably that is actually a very good way to start off a talk like this. Since many of us might be rather new to the Buddhist tradition, it's probably a good idea to start with a very basic foundational observation that all of us, everyone, equally, does not want to suffer. All of us equally want to be happy, to be satisfied, to experience flourishing, to thrive as a human being, isn't it? This basic recognition, you know, this basic understanding that all of us want to be free from suffering and all of us want to experience well-being, that's the very starting place into the Buddha Dharma. To really see, okay, no matter where we come from, no matter what culture we grew up in, what language we speak, what our background is, no matter what our profession is, with respect to this wish, I want to be happy, I want to have well-being, I don't want to suffer, we are all equal, aren't we? We are all the same in that, right? It's something very intuitive, something that we might be unconscious of most of the time, but actually if we look at our daily actions, how we spend our day from morning till evening, the motivation of I want to be happy is always there. It's sometimes tiny in the subtext, you know, in the background, but it's there. We wake up in the morning, what's the first thing we think? Cappuccino. Cappuccino with almond milk, a croissant, one of the vegan places down in Madhurganj, or Dalakot. And that wish makes us get out of bed. We go to the bathroom to relieve ourselves from suffering first, to be free from difficulty. And then we go about our day to have good experiences, meet friends, talk to people, do what we planned, go to the waterfall, and in the evening we're going to go to the ecstatic dance up in the forest, and we have all these things. All of that being motivated by what? By the basic wish of wanting to be happy and wanting to avoid suffering, isn't it? Until we go to bed in the evening, falling asleep with one thought: I hope it's going to be fine tomorrow. I'll be free from suffering. However, just as not wanting to suffer, just as merely not liking that we suffer, is not going to make the suffering go away, is it? Just as wanting to be happy, wanting to experience well-being and have a happy, fulfilled life, just to wish for that does not create happiness experiences, does it, like that? And the reason for that is that both our suffering and our happiness experiences, they don't just arise randomly, arbitrarily, but they do arise from a very specific set of causes and conditions. This is very important. There is always a particular set of circumstances needed that will give rise to a particular experience as its cause. Experiences do not arise randomly, just like that, although it appears like that. Right? Just as a flower does not arise randomly, but a flower depends upon a seed planted in fertile earth, which is then nourished by water or fertilizer and light from the sun, warmth from the sun, and the factor of time unfolding. All these conditions need to come together in order to produce a flower, right? A sprout. If the conditions are missing, a sprout cannot grow, right? In the same way, also with respect to the arising of the experience of happiness or suffering, that also depends upon a very specific set of causes and conditions, without which neither of it will arise. It is all a coming together of specific circumstances, and that's important to think about, because we never think about that. We think, well, I should be happy, and if I'm not happy, something is wrong, mostly because somebody else is doing something I don't like. But we never really check what are the actual causes for happiness. What is the actual cause for suffering experiences? But the Buddha, he was the one who laid out the causes and conditions for either happiness or suffering perfectly clearly. He was the one that gave an incredibly detailed explanation of how all this works, what it is that leads to suffering, what it is that leads to happiness, what needs to be done to overcome my emotional suffering, what needs to be done to experience perfect happiness. He saw that, he realized that very, very clearly. This was the Buddha's expertise. This was his main realization. Well, what he perfectly realized. What he then perfectly lived in harmony with, and what he then in turn taught to others perfectly as well. So that other beings may also realize this and create their own happiness, create their freedom from suffering. It is something we need to create. It doesn't come like that. So, what did the Buddha show as, for the main cause of suffering to be? What did the Buddha point out to see, okay, this is the main cause of suffering? What did he say? According to the Buddha, suffering experiences do not have their main cause in the outside world, in the external world, in other people, other outer circumstances. But the main cause of our suffering is to be found within our own minds. It's our own confused minds which creates suffering experiences. It is us actively, but unconsciously, holding totally confused views about how things actually are, which is the cause of suffering. The Buddha taught that at the moment we suffer because we do not accept things as they are. But we are always manipulating things. We are always interpreting things. We are constantly conceptualize things, holding all these expectations of things, constantly creating and recreating our own concepts And instead of actually seeing things clearly, how they are naturally, by looking at them clearly, patiently, discovering what the nature of reality is, and then living in harmony with that, instead of doing that, we constantly arrange things and manipulate things, try to make things exist in a way how I want them to be, for me. We are holding very strong dualistic concepts about me, I, and mine. We are living each in our own soap opera, really, only seeing our own interpretation of everything all the time. I want it to be like that. This is how it was before. This is how it should be next. He shouldn't act like that. Strong grasping and attachment arising for how I want it to be, how it should be. She shouldn't say that. How dare she say like this, How dare she act like that? She should be like this. Strong aversion arising to how I do not want it to be. And in this way, we are constantly creating and recreating these strong concepts, conceptualizations about me, myself, and others. We are living in our own projections, while at the same time we are completely unaware that we do this. It is this unawareness, being unaware of how we constantly create and live in our own projections, which most of the time have no valid foundation in reality whatsoever, are total fabrications of the mind if we check them. It is this which leads us to experience reoccurring suffering over and over and over and over again. Episode after episode after episode, season after season, we live through our own Netflix series of emotional suffering. Isn't it? The next season of samsara, attachment. Right? The next season of samsara, anger, aversion. And then it's loss and fear and despair. But at the end, the last episode, hope. A new person comes into my life. Now it's all wonderful. It's so incredible. But then, first season of the episode of the next season, attachment, grasping, jealousy, anger, aversion, despair, loss, hope. This is what we call samsara, the reoccurring wheel of the same old sufferings experiencing over and over again, because we never go to the root and see, hey, I have a cognitive mistake going on actually in how I approach life. We are actually not at all in tune with how things are. While we think, I know exactly how things are. I know how things are. The way how I see things is exactly how they are. She's wrong. He's being stupid. He's an idiot. Yes, I know. Whereas we don't know at all, often. According to the Buddha's view, we are confused. The Buddha called this confusion, this cognitive mistake that we have, he called it ignorance. He didn't call it ignorance because the Buddha did not speak English, but ignorance is the English translation of the Sanskrit word avidya, which basically means not knowing. In Tibetan it's madikpa. Vidya means to know or knowledge, and a is a negation particle, which means to not know. In Tibetan it's the same. Dikpa means knowledge, wisdom. Ma is a negation particle. Marikpa is not knowledge, not knowing. We are having not knowing in our mind streams very strongly. We have habitualized ourselves for a very long time with not really knowing how things are. Here, not knowing does not just mean me not knowing something, like, I don't know, me not knowing when the library opens and closes on the weekends, or me not knowing how a microscope works, or me not knowing how to play tennis. It's not that kind of not knowing about something, like just lacking a piece of information about something. It's not that. But here, not knowing refers to us actively misknowing the nature of reality. Us actively wrong knowing how things exist. It is a mind that is mistaken that we have at the moment. A mind mistaken with respect to how we ourselves, others and phenomena actually exist. We are misperceiving that at the moment, the Buddha found. If we were to realize the actual nature of things, if we were to really know how things are, we could not suffer. We wouldn't suffer. This is basically what the Buddha is saying. We would not project wrong concepts onto things in ourselves. We would not be able to give rise to exaggerating attachment and exaggerating hatred, aversion, jealousy, fear, low self-esteem, all these things that cause us to be so afraid and feel lonely and completely confused. This could not arise if we were to truly see how things are, how I exist, you exist, we exist interconnectedly as as interconnected sentient beings in this universe. But at the moment, since we do have ignorance, since at the moment we do misperceive things, we do have attachment, anger, jealousy, pride, low self-esteem, exaggerations going on, and we do suffer because of that. Right? If we were to be able to remove or correct our own misperceptions, our own ignorance, then in turn also our various disturbing emotions would have no foundation to arise anymore, and suffering would be removed from the mind completely. This is what the Buddha taught. And he did not only talk about this, well, hey, this is how it works, good luck guys, but he taught a path to actually do this. Something that everyone individually can test out for themselves. Right? The Buddha didn't say, there's ignorance, we are misperceiving the nature of reality, guys. Very sorry, but I'm blissing out in nirvana, so well, tough luck. But he said, look, this is how it goes together. This is what you need to do. And what is the first thing that we need to do in order to overcome this ignorance? If we take this hypothesis to be true, and if we want to discover it. First, we need to identify, okay, if that is really the case, how does this work? We have to create wisdom, insight in saying, okay, how do I misperceive things? How do I not see reality clearly? What does that mean? And the Buddha laid out 3 main ways of how our ignorance at the moment misperceives the nature of reality, how we distort reality. And these 3 ways I would like to go through today a little bit, if you don't mind. The first thing that we misperceive, or the first way of how ignorance distorts our view of reality, is that at the moment we see that which is by nature changing to be unchanging. We see things as being permanent and long-lasting, whereas in fact all things are impermanent and momentary. Although everything is by nature transient and always changing, transforming, we perceive them, we hold on to them as being somehow enduring, long-lasting, to be unchanging, and we cling to them. Which introduces the very important, fundamentally important subject which is taught in all the Buddhist traditions, which basically actually is the very first teaching that the Buddha gave when he taught about the Four Noble Truths after his attainment of full enlightenment, which is the subject of impermanence. The Buddha said, impermanent are all things. Unstable and not constant are all things. Therefore, not a cause for comfort and satisfaction are all things. A very straightforward statement from the Buddha right there. Is a quote from him. He said, everything is changing, unstable and unconstant. And therefore, all of these changing things are not a cause for real comfort and satisfaction. We need to realize. Everything in this world is marked by, it is characterized by being impermanent, changing. Things arise, they abide for some time, and then they disappear. Although things appear to us as being constant and unchanging and totally there, that is not how they exist in reality. In reality, whatever arises necessarily passes away. If we were to truly realize just this, our lives would change. If we, not just intellectually, but truly were to be able to appreciate this fact of reality, many of our sufferings and emotional confusions would not be able to arise. It's something very profound right here. I mean, in one way, in the world we can see, yes, things arise and pass away all the time, don't they? People are born, people grow up, people grow old, and eventually pass away. They disappear. Houses are built, they remain for a little while, they start to wear down, and eventually they collapse. Everything in nature constantly changes. Right? From one season to the next, nature undergoes a complete transformation. Winter, spring, summer and fall, all you gotta do is call. And I'll be there. You know that song? No? Doesn't matter at all. Right? Plants, they grow. They look beautiful. They start to wither and they die. Even mountains, the Himalayas, right? You can be, on a clear day, you can go to Down Court and you see the foothills of the Himalayas starting right here. It's like this mountain is totally there, permanently throning, being there, as if totally unchanging. But mountains erode. They fluctuate. They are not permanent. The environment is in a constant state of flux, a constant state of change. Also, our internal world is changing. Our bodies change. We are born, we grow up, we grow old, eventually we will have to pass away. No way around that. Our minds change, right? Personality changes, emotions fluctuate. Sometimes we feel super happy, we wake up in the morning and we want to hug the whole world. So great, such a nice day. Next morning we wake up, we don't want to see anybody. Right? We turn off our phones. We never turn off our phones, but at least, that we don't do. But at least we kind of don't write back and we don't react, right? Our minds are very dynamic, right? It's from 1 hour to the next. It can completely change, right? Isn't it? Constantly. Our relationship with others changes constantly. People come together, they stay together for a while when they're lucky, and they need to part again. Every meeting, every coming together necessarily leads to parting. There is no way around that. You have to think about that. Really. Even right now, we are a group, right? We are together for a little while. Then, after 5 o'clock, we part. Whenever you meet somebody, whoever it is, inevitably, you must part again. Whether it is in a romantic relationship, whether it is a family member, a friend, someone you work with, someone you just met down in town or in the dining hall, it's tea time. We meet somebody and we need to part. This is a fact of reality. The Buddha didn't invent that, right? He just observed it. This is how it is. It's just a matter of time when we part, right? We either part while we are alive, or if not, when we die. Or one of the 2 or 3 or 5 dies. Right? So everything abides for some time and then falls apart. This is how it is, right? We can observe this with our direct experience, right? We can have this cup here, which is my new favorite cup, with this zebra style here, that you gave to me. Now when I drop this cup on the floor here, which Kumpen would not like to drop it on the new wooden floor, but if I do it outside, it will shatter into pieces. And the cup here, which seems quite stable, will go out of existence. right? Obviously. Well, its going out of existence is already in its nature right now, that it will perish. It is already, the potential of this already abides right now. Not yet. Right? My cup. This is what we call a coarse form of impermanence. A coarse form, an obvious form of impermanence. Things arise, are here, and then they go out of existence. But we should really check, and I would like you, in your own experience, to relate this talk to what is going on in your own life and in your own mind. We should really check, okay, what do you think will always be there for you? Your parents, your partner, your friend, your dog, your cup. Check for yourself, where do you think this or he or they will always give me security? Deep down. Your body, your beauty, your youth. It is this belief, this holding on to, that to permanence, which gives rise to attachment. We start to cling, we grasp, and it's this grasping attachment which leads to tight mind, narrow mind, suffering mind, non-flexible mind. It creates suffering. The more attached we are to a particular concept, which does not really hold in reality, the more we will need to suffer. Because we cannot act against reality. You can act against reality, but suffering will be the result of that. You see that a bit? Not only is it the case that whatever arises one day will pass away, but whenever something abides, it changes this very moment. Okay. All things are changing momentarily, all the time. It doesn't appear like that, but when we look at my theory at cup, right, it appears like being this stable phenomena here, which kind of holds my tea from one moment to the next. But we know, of course, all of us, that if we look closely with a microscope inside, we can see that there is just minute particles whirling around incredibly fast, expanding, contracting, in constant motion, in constant flux. Right? Change happens in here, in the smallest conceivable unit of time. This thing here changes every moment. Change takes place. And then our conceptual minds draw lines around this thing and superimpose a sense of staticness, of permanence onto it. Right? And it's this false sense of staticness which then acts as the basis for us to latch onto it, to become attached to it. And most of our emotional reactions towards anything are based on this, because we don't see this is simply a dependent, ever-changing, unstable process, is what it is. In reality, this is just a constant flow of change, but our eye faculty here is a bit too coarse to perceive that. But this is what's actually going on, you see. Wouldn't you agree? It's a bit like when you look at a river, right? A river is the classical example for something that is changing constantly. Although we go down to the river and we say, oh, look at the beautiful river, as if there's something solid there, which in and of itself is the river, it is obvious that there's just a flow of change. There's nothing which subsists in and of itself, but it's just an ever-changing situation, isn't it? The same when you kind of look at a candle flame, for example, right? Our mind looks at it and imputes, oh, candle flame, sometimes very still, very nice. But actually, it's constantly using up the fuel, and it depends on these causes and conditions for it to stay, but it actually changes constantly. It's never static. Like that, in the same way, a table, a laptop, this building, a person that you are attached to, for them to stay the way they are right now, how you want them to be, is in the nature just like a river, just like a candle flame, right? It is just that the river and the candle flame disclose their impermanent nature to us more obviously, whereas the table and the laptop and the building and the person don't. But basically they are the same thing, okay? It's the same with our bodies. I'm giving many examples here, but I think it's good to check that, you know. When we wake up in the morning, we go to the bathroom, brush our teeth, hopefully, every morning, and we stand there, we look in a mirror, right, and then we think the person that looks back to me from the mirror is pretty much the same person that looked back to me from the mirror yesterday. But that cannot be. Right? There's no way that this is reality. Something has changed, you know. I mean, remember how you looked when you were 9 years old. You take a picture of yourself when you were 9 years old. Right? And you look at the picture, look into the mirror and you think, whoa, things have changed. Right? This body is not the same. Also, my personality has changed. Right? I have different thoughts now, different views. Have I also changed? Or is there a subsistent I which is there on the picture and is still here right now, unchanging? What do you think? Seems like, no? Permanent I. Impossible. Anyway, we'll see that a bit later. You know, we see, okay, this change has happened. But when did that change happen? It didn't happen overnight. It happened all the time, right? Continuously, it's happening right now. Right? Not all at once. It's not that one day you wake up in the morning, you look into the mirror brushing your teeth, and suddenly you're 87. You have a heart attack, you know? It's like, oh my God. Right? It's not like that. But it's happening slowly, so that one morning you wake up and you think, oh my God, is this a new wrinkle here or what? No way. Right there. With a phone, you look like that with an extra selfie camera. Like that. Put cream, I'm permanent. I'm fine, right? It's like that. You know, or when you have a birthday, like a round big birthday, like when you turn 30 or 40 or 50, you know, somebody approaches you and gives you a tap on the shoulder and says, "Wow, how does it feel to be 40?" It's like, well, pretty much similar as I felt yesterday. You know, it's the same feeling, right? It's not that something grand has happened because you turn 40 all the time, kind of a thing. I remember when I was a kid, you know. I was very tall already as a kid also, or there was a point when I grew very tall quite quickly. And then at one time my auntie told me, "Wow, when did you get so tall?" It's like, I don't know. All the time? Is that okay for an answer? No idea. It happens all the time. In this same way. Everything that seems to exist in a sustainable manner, okay, changes right now. Everything that seems to exist in a long-lasting way disintegrates this very moment. It's because of this that in Buddhism we often compare this world as being like a dream, like an illusion, an ungraspable state of constant flux, which we constantly label to be this or that and interpret, whereas in fact it is just a flow of transformation, a flow of becoming something else. This is what we are. This is what a person is. A sentient being. You are someone that becomes somebody else every moment. Do you have the experience that the person who is sitting here right now and the person that came into, like you, like 40 minutes ago when you came through this door, is still the same person? I mean, intellectually we know, no, I have changed. But what do you feel? Do you feel like, well, I'm kind of still Wangdu, same person? Welcome to your sense of permanence, if that feeling is there. Right? We cannot perceive that momentary change directly. This is what we call subtle impermanence. This is something, we have the coarse form of impermanence and then the subtle one, which we cannot really see as such, but which we are able to reason out. We can logically think about that and see, okay, yeah, if something comes together, there's not a moment where it doesn't change. It's always influenced by causes and conditions. This is how it is. If we meditate on that, If we really think about that clearly and then sit with that thought for a long time, and any one of you who ever did a Vipassana course with Goenkaji, maybe next door or wherever, knows, right? Anicca, anicca. You have 7 more days to go. Okay. Yeah? Then you know, like, okay, things are always changing. Right? These Vipassana courses are very helpful because it brings our intellectual understanding of impermanent nature of reality to a heart level. We experience it so strongly, right? Because intellectually, we all know this stuff. Like, yeah, Wangdu, I learned that in school, that on an atomic level everything changes. Science has proven that. All matter changes all the time. We know this. But does this intellectual knowledge help us in any way to does it actually influence our lives? Does it actually influence our decision making? Not really. Why? Because our lives and how we decide things and how we feel emotionally is not at all governed by our intellectual understanding, but it's governed by our instinctive habits. And our instinctive habit is grasping impermanence, holding on to things, being the way they are. We mostly don't connect the dots, you see. We say, yes, everything is impermanent, right? Yeah, of course. We say the words, but then something really changes in our life and it totally crushes us. Right? We suffer so much because our words are not in accordance with our innate view of clinging to staticness. And this comes from ignorance, okay? This is what the Buddha meant by not seeing things clearly. The Buddha proved things are logically proven to never be able to stay the same. Why? Because things depend on causes and conditions. Last point for this subject, okay? Everything depends on something else for its existence, right? Everything you point to exists due to something else also existing. Things influence each other all the time. And everything that exists for something else for its existence, well, that something else depends on something else for its existence. Like that, we have this huge web of interdependent cause and effect going on all the time. Various causes and conditions happening, within which everything constantly transforms. And although things appear to be static, they can't be. Grasping onto permanence is a distortion. Okay? And why are we talking about this? Because this grasping leads to suffering. Right? When we grasp at permanence, we develop unrealistic expectations towards things and people. Me being like this, her being like that, being fixed and independent and unrealistic. Identifications come up. We plan this and that, and then it doesn't work out like that due to impermanence and causes and conditions playing out differently. We get so emotionally disappointed. Right? So when we are able to realize impermanence, okay, change is the very nature of things. The very nature of life is change. Then that will reduce our fixed, attached views. We can see, impermanence at work. Something unexpected happens, our mind remains calmer. Because we meditate on this subject, we can see, all right, that's exactly what I've been meditating on. Things are changing. And we can spare ourselves from unnecessary emotional suffering by just thinking about this. And eventually, this will help us to gain deeper insight into the nature of reality by meditating on the impermanent nature of things. Can you see this a bit? Does this make sense? Can you see how not accepting momentary change leads to suffering? Maybe, right? We have to think about this. Now, on the basis of this, seeing that which is by nature changing to be unchanging and grasping, that leads to a second way of how our ignorance distorts our view of reality. By seeing that which is by nature changed to be unchanging, we then also start to feel that that which is actually not so satisfactory, we see it as being totally satisfactory. Wow. We hold on to things which are in their nature actually giving rise to suffering, to be totally satisfactory and wonderful, and being able to make me lastingly happy. You know, the things we like appear to be long-lasting and wonderful, then they change, we get disappointed, we suffer, because we don't see that which is unsatisfactory, which is impermanent, is unsatisfactory. The Buddha has discovered that we as human beings, in our quest for wanting to be happy, as we've seen, right? We want to be joyful people. Due to not really understanding impermanence, we are going about our quest of happiness in a very confused way. Since we are following our mistaken view of grasping at permanence all the time, we don't see, or we don't emotionally accept that whatever is but transitory and by nature changing cannot actually be the basis for lasting satisfactory experience. We put so much trust into impermanent things to make us permanently joyful. This is our problem. We put so much trust into all kinds of temporary experiences, chasing after one temporary satisfaction after another, going through all this, our day in all these different ways to experience nice things, which are all totally impermanent, which give us a short sense of niceness, like, oh, this is nice, but that next moment it fades out again. We look for something else. We are constantly chasing after temporary, samsaric pleasures, as we call them, which are not lasting at all. And therefore, we are always, again and again, experiencing a sense of dissatisfaction once these things run out. Right? We wake up in the morning, we go to Bodhi Green Vegan Cafe to have the almond coffee, and then we have one almond coffee, it's really nice, and we want to have another one, and it's also quite nice, but then we want to go have some breakfast, then we think, oh, let's do something else, let's go for a walk. We go for a walk up the hill, and it's really hot, I don't want to go for a walk anymore, let's have a lemonade anywhere, just sit in the shade is a bit cool, let's go somewhere else. We are always chasing after different experiences, never really being able to arrive anywhere and just rest. We are putting our trust into conditioned existence so strongly, which is not reliable, the Buddha said. The Buddha called this the suffering of change. The suffering of change is a form of suffering which is very difficult to realize for us, very difficult to identify, since it refers to what we usually identify as our pleasant experiences. The Buddha describes how our current pleasant experiences are in their nature unsatisfactory, since the pleasure we get from them always fades out after a short while. It never lasts, it is impermanent. So our ordinary happiness experiences are in the nature of change and therefore disappoint us. But we put so much trust in them, thinking, well, if I do it again, maybe then it will last. Let's just do it one more time. Right? One more time. And when that runs out, we think, one more time. One more time. Sorry. Right? We do that over and over and over. Right? We have to appreciate that although, yes, all kinds of short-term experiences give us a short-term pleasure, a short-term form of happiness, once this is experienced, we do not experience it for what it actually is, but we grasp, we hold on to things. And in reality, this is simply a tranquilizer for an underlying, much more deeply underlying sense of dissatisfaction that we have. We are internally dissatisfied, and we put on tranquilizers of short-term pleasures on top of it, which makes us feel nice a bit, then fades out again, but we never go to the root and see actually something else is wrong. We distract ourselves all the time with temporary things. And that, the Buddha's point being, is never going to be able to cut the root of suffering and bring us really reliable inner happiness. You see, we have to appreciate any particular activity in the beginning is nice. But the more you engage in it, the more it changes and turns into discomfort. Initially it's nice, after some time it makes you suffer, which is really strange if you think about it. It's pleasure only shortly, which means not really in a state of pleasure. If something were really in its nature pleasure, then the more you do it, the more happy it should make you constantly, right? This is what it means to be really, truly happiness. The more you engage in it, the happier it makes you. Whereas our usual short-term pleasures, the more we engage in them, the more unhappy they make you. Right? I mean, the classic example is standing in the sun when it's nice weather, right? You go out, the sun is shining, and you think, oh my God, the sun is shining, it's so beautiful, and you stand in the sun, it's so nice. And you stand in the sun for 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and after 15 minutes of standing in the sun like a statue, you feel, poof, a little bit hot standing in the sun. Right? Maybe I go to sit in the shade. And you go over to sit down on the bench in the shade and you feel, oh my God, it's so nice to sit in the shade. So nice to sit here. It's so comfortable, so refreshing. And you sit in the shade for 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes. After 15 minutes of sitting in the shade, you feel, oh, it's a little bit fresh in the shade. Maybe I go back to stand in the sun. And all day, kind of go from sun to shade to sun to shade, which is what our Tushita dogs here, who lived here a few years ago, did all day long. We had 2 Tushita dogs here, Ninja and Yeshe, compassion and wisdom. They were hanging out here. The students in the 10-day courses loved them because we had karma yoga jobs to brush them and to clean them, and they were just lying there. The students would love them and cuddle them. They're really great. But Ninja, she would all day long, she would spend her time by lying in the sun. And then after half an hour, she would stand up, shake herself, go 2 meters into the shade, and vroom, fall down there again. And after half an hour of lying in the shade, she would stand up, shake herself, and go into the sun. And we would sit there and watch her and think, well, this is the suffering of change unfolding right in front of our eyes. It is so obvious. We are not standing in the sun and sitting in the shade all day, but you check, what is your suffering of change? How do you design your day every day, living in Dharmakot, going from one temporary satisfaction to the next temporary satisfaction, never really being able to arrive anywhere. And as soon as you sit somewhere and don't do anything for 10 minutes, what does your mind tell you? What is next? Right? We are totally restless. This is suffering, right? This is grasping. It leads to grasping to what cannot truly make you happy. And the Buddha, he saw how people want to be happy and don't want to suffer, which is a natural aspiration, while all the time they're going about their happiness in this confused way. We want to be happy, but what do? We constantly recreate suffering. And that made him extremely sad. And it caused so much compassion for sentient beings to arise in his heart, that he told, hey guys, this is not it. You have to look inside for the happiness you're looking for. It is not out there in these suffering conditions. As soon as we can accept that which is unsatisfactory to simply be that, unsatisfactory, then mental peace can begin. We will be able to develop detachment, which is to say, we have less unhealthy grasping to these temporary things. When they arise, they are fine. Sometimes you have a cappuccino, great, have a cappuccino. But if the cappuccino runs out and your mind gets agitated, there's a problem, right? There's a book by Lama Yeshe called When the Chocolate Runs Out. What to do then, right? when the cappuccino runs out, when there's, we think like, well, yeah, it's obvious, Wangdu, okay, I get it. But our emotional responses are so governed by that. The other day, when I was in Europe, in Lisbon, I was visiting my friend, he was talking about, there is this incredible pizza place that I want to take you. It's so great. They make these huge pizzas, and they have this particular dough, and the crust is so great, and we have to go there. I was like, okay, let's go there. Yeah, when do we go? Tomorrow evening. Okay, let's go tomorrow evening. And this became a subject, right? We talked every day a little bit about, when we go to that pizza place, also around the pizza place, there's another thing, and it became this thing, right, that you really look forward to. And we planned, and then we went there, and we got the car didn't work, we had to go by bus, we went to bus to this own place, we took a walk, we got to the pizza place, and it was closed. It's like, no. And it's like, well, it doesn't matter, let's go to another place and have some lunch somewhere else. No. I want to go to that place, right? But it's closed, we cannot change anything about it, if the pizza place is closed, you cannot open it up. If you cannot change the situation, if there's a situation that happens that you don't like, if you cannot change the situation, what else can you do? Only one thing. You change your mind. You change your thought. You say, okay, it doesn't matter, next time. And you drop the problem. But we usually don't drop the problem. We give ourselves all the reason why this is so unfair, and I checked online, it said it will be open, it becomes this huge thing. We write a book in our mind why we don't like the situation. So we create our own suffering. When it would be so easy to just let go. So what? Move on. We cannot change the situation. We can only change our attitude. And that you can change. That's the good message. That's the message. That's what you have the freedom to do. To change your attitude inside. In Indonesia, they have a monkey trap. Okay, there's hunters in Indonesia who hunt monkeys. And they have a trap, a particular traditional way of how to catch monkeys. And that trap consists of a wooden box that is hollow and has just a tiny little hole. And they put a banana into the wooden box and put the wooden box up on a tree, okay? Then the hunters hide and they wait. After a while, monkeys come, and through their sixth monkey sense, they know there's a wooden box, it has a banana in there, right? They get it. They kind of have that monkey wisdom to can identify where the banana is. They get it. They go to the box, they put their arm in, take the banana, but then the monkey has a problem. Because it cannot get its hand out when it makes a fist. The hole is not big enough. It has the banana in its hand, but it cannot get the hand out. Then the hunters very, very relaxedly, slowly go to catch the monkey. And the monkey sees the hunters. The monkeys are quite intelligent, actually. They see the hunters coming and they know they are done for, right? The hunter's going to catch. But it cannot let go. It can't let go. All it would have to do is to just get the hand out and escape. It can't do that. And the hunters catch it. That's it. We are a bit like that sometimes. We can't let go. This imprint of strong grasping. Seeing that which is changing to be unchanging. That which is not really satisfactory to be satisfactory and cling. All of that is built on a more fundamental form of ignorance, which I would like to talk about now. The third way of how ignorance distorts our view of reality. And it's actually the most important one to consider if we really want to free ourselves from recurring suffering. Namely, that we are seeing that which is not self to be self. We see that which has no self to have self, self-existence. We are strongly holding on to things having a self. What does that mean, us strongly holding on to things having a self? It refers to that we believe that things exist by themselves on their own, independently. inherently. We grasp that there existing an inherently existent I, looking out into an inherently existent world out there. Ignorance grasps onto inherently existent, independently existent I and things in the world. Whereas I, me, as well as things in the world, do not have any inherent self-existence whatsoever. What we call I is simply an ever-changing, dependent process. Things in the world are simply an ever-changing, dependent process. And nothing whatsoever exists by itself, on its own, from its own side. Everything is dependent and arising as a dependent process. But we don't see that. We think, I am totally existing by myself. Phenomena, other people, totally exist on their own as independent entities. This is what I like, give it to me. This is what I don't like, I want to be free of it. This is what I don't care about, don't show it to me. That's what's going on. Which is not at all how reality exists. And this is our most fundamental form of ignorance playing out, which is called self-grasping ignorance. Us having this strong clinging to a solid me in here that is unchanging and concretely there, and solid phenomena in the world that are concretely there, independent of my mind apprehending them or not, they are there, because that's how they appear to me. And it is this which is the very root, actually, for our attachment, aversion, and resulting suffering. The subject of no self, incredibly profound and difficult to understand. First of all, as human beings in our life, we have a very strong sense of I, don't we? A strong notion of a concrete me. We look at each other and we assume that each and every one of us is a solid self. That there is some inherent thing in me and in you which is called I, myself, me, right? We feel that. This notion of an inherent I is the biggest source of attachment. As if there is a small little diamond in here that has a Wangdu engraved in it, the real thing. The real Wangdu-ness in me. Where is that? Right? The Buddha asked. When we have that strong feeling, then it's this I also which should be seen by others, which should be recognized by others, should become successful and loved by everyone, should have likes on Instagram, should be, respected and appreciated by everybody, and if it's criticized, we get really aversion to that. Our whole perspective, how we relate to the world, is always through the thought, I. And then our whole life revolves around, how can I get what makes me happy? How can I be free from what makes me unhappy, right? We are so attached to the I. This notion, however, this feeling of being an inherent, concrete self, is a misunderstanding. It's an exaggeration. We do not exist in that inherent, concrete way, the way we think we do. And the Buddha had a thought experiment, actually we call it a meditation. But maybe you can call it a thought experiment, because as soon as I say the word meditation, it's like, ooh, a meditation. And it kind of becomes this mystical thing and spiritual, but it's much more practical. He had a way to think about this, And he said, okay, hey, if you think you are this concrete I here that is totally there, and the whole universe revolves around this me, he asked, where is this I? Where is this me that you think is so concretely there? Show it to me. If you were to check, where this I actually is, if you were to look for it, it becomes incredibly difficult to point to anything that is it. Where we can say, here is the I, here is my essence, my self-existent essence is right here. We cannot actually find it when we look for it. You might say, don't be ridiculous, Wangdu, of course I can find it. My body is I. My body is me. Here I am. The Buddha said, well, if you say you are your body, then you should be able to identify a part of your body which is I. Which one is it? And then these yogis would sit down and say, okay, can I actually find myself, my I, anywhere in the body? You can check, right? Is my head my I? Like my right ear? Is that my eye? No, it's just an ear faculty. It's my eye, my eye. I have two eyeballs, a nose. Lama Rinpoche would say, is your eye in your nose anywhere? No, these are just physical situations, right? Your right arm, is that myself? It's something which you have, something which I use to write a letter. But it's not what I am. I'm not a right arm. I have a right arm. If you have something, you cannot be it. Think about it. Left arm, fingers, palm, right? Upper part of the body, lower part of the body, my bum, my right leg, my left leg. You can go deeper and check, is any of my muscles, my sinews and the joints my eye? Is my skeleton, my skull, the bones, the intestines, the heart, the lung, the spleen, the kidney? You can check this body part by part and see, is any of these body parts a self, a me, an I? And the more you do that, especially when you sit down in meditation and try to, with concentration, look for and analyze these body parts, the more you will see, okay, these are just impermanent, changing physical parts, all arising and changing, existing dependently, not having a particular essence, but depending on other things. There's just an interdependent co-arising of body parts there. I cannot point to one thing and say, this is myself. Cannot find it in the body. Then you might say, okay. But maybe I'm my mind. I am the clear consciousness. This is what people are really fans of. I am my awareness. Well, are you your awareness? It's a little bit difficult to talk about this subject if we have not studied the various functions and parts of the mind, because just as the body has various physical parts, also the Buddha mapped out the mind very, very clearly, that the mind has different parts. We can talk about the mind in so many different ways, and it's an extremely inspiring subject to study. It's the subject of Lorik, mind and awareness. These texts where you can map out the mind into, conceptual consciousness, non-conceptual consciousness, mistaken consciousnesses, non-mistaken consciousnesses, mind and main minds, mental factors, valid cognition, non-valid cognition. There's, these scholars from the time of the Buddha have really mapped out the mind very clearly. And then you can check, is any one of these forms of consciousness myself? Now you can simply say, okay, am I my feelings? When you have a pleasant feeling, are you that pleasant feeling? No, because sometimes you have an unpleasant feeling, right? It's also you, right? Are you your emotions? Are you your happiness? Well, sometimes you have sadness, right? Sometimes we have sadness, we think, I am my sadness, we totally go into it very deeply. Then another condition arises, suddenly that sadness disappears, something new arises, and you think, oh, it's not that bad after all. I'm fine. Right? Our thoughts, our memories from the past, our fantasies, our joy, our anger, whatever it might be, your fears, are you any particular mind state of that? Not really, if you were to dig down and look for it. These are all simply changing states, arising and passing, impermanent, all existing dependently, not existing on their own, coming and going, an interdependent co-arising of mind, different mental states. You cannot point to anything and say, this is the fixed me. Sometimes we experience very strong anxiety, very strong fear, and we identify a lot with it. We think, we have this feeling like, I am this. But are you? Are you your fear? If that were the case, You could never experience anything else, because you are fear. But that's not the case. Fear is a conditional arising. It is there for a while, but watch the fear, watch the anxiety, watch the emotion that arises. It is like a candle flame, like a river. It has dynamics, it flows, it changes. It's a dependent arising, which is no self, no essence, like clouds in the sky passing through. So just briefly, sorry to bombard you with these things, but when we look at it, neither in the body can you find a true self, nor in the mind can you find a true self. But still we feel that there is this third thing here, which is I. That is so ingrained within us. It's so strong, So that solid self that we think we are, like, there is this owner of the body and mind. That's even how we talk in language, right? Here I am. I have a body. I have a mind. Well, who is this I who has these two? Not easy to answer. If you were to really check, you can have an experience in meditation where you feel, I cannot find my I. I cannot find it. If you come to that experience where you think, I cannot find it, rest for as long as you can in that experience of not finding. That not finding can be very peaceful. Also a bit scary, because you notice that which you always thought is concretely totally there, is not there in that way. It's like, there's these stories in the past meditators who were meditating, in the monasteries, these monks and the nuns in the nunneries meditating on the absence of a concretely existent self. And there's one monk who suddenly in meditation was like grabbing his stonka like that, because he felt everything disappearing and he wanted to reaffirm that he's actually here. And then the supervising monk was saying, he has just, realized that he's not really there the way he thinks he is. The way he thinks he is. Like, wow. Because we're so habituated to grasping itself. We don't exist like that. So, this I, this self, this me that we hold on to so strongly as being so real, unchanging and concretely there, on which we build so many of our emotional fabrications and stories, all of our life is revolving around this I, it doesn't exist the way it appears. It is another exaggeration of the mind. We have an over-solidification of self going on, an over-inflation, a cognitive mistake. The feeling of a concrete self is what is fabricated by ignorance. And it cannot be found once you analyze, which is a shock. If this is not a shock, what is? However, and this is very important now, we are not saying that you don't exist. We have to be careful to have a middle way going on here. We are not saying that there is no I whatsoever. You do exist, okay? Don't worry. You do exist, you can come to puja after dinner, it's all fine, okay? But we exist simply as a conventional, dependent phenomenon. The experience of I is there is simply a relative, dependent I that is here, which experiences happiness, experiences suffering, a dependent relative I, which works and studies and eats and sleeps and meditates, and eventually one day will become enlightened. However, this I exists just as a dependent convention. It is a process, a relational relative process, and there's nothing fixed or absolute about it whatsoever. This is what we have to think about. We simply call this combination of body and mind I. This interdependent combination of physical phenomena, mental phenomena, we call it Wangdu, Peter, Akshay, Jennifer, which is fine. And Wangdu is here, talking all the time. Right? This is reality. Wangdu is here, kind of. You can't say, well, Wangdu doesn't exist. It does exist. You've been listening for 1 hour and 15 minutes already. And I'll stop soon. Okay? But how does Wangdu exist is the question. You see that difference? You cannot really find a concrete Wangdu-ness anywhere, while at the same time, Wangdu exists dependently as a dependent arising. This is the middle way view of realizing the unification of emptiness, no self, and dependent origination, which is what the Buddha found. It is just that our usual minds are not satisfied with that. The usual mind is not satisfied with being just a merely designated process, constantly changing and nothing concrete there. Our ignorant mind wants something concrete. I'm like this. You are like that. Whew. Okay, let's go for lunch or dinner, That's it. This is how it is. Let's just stop talking about it. Your partner always talking about the emptiness of the eye. Like, leave me alone with that. We want something, we are concretifying things. But the thing is, things are not concrete. That's what it is. And the problem is the concretification leads to suffering. Because as soon as you hold on to something totally concrete there, when it's not actually there, you start to project, you start to conceptualize, you start to get into this spiral of confusion. And it builds and builds and builds from that, and we find ourselves in the samsara episodes. You see that a bit? Can you see that a little bit? Or am I just talking? Okay. Same goes for things in the world, by the way. I just talked about the I now being a dependent arising and not existing from its own side. But everything in the world, all the things are just like that. We wrongly grasp to things around us as having a concrete self-existence, whereas everything is merely a designated dependent process. Once we realize that, we realize emptiness of inherent nature. And that has the power to eliminate the various layers of confusion that we have in our mind stream since beginningless time, we say. Many, many past lives we are holding and grasping, which makes us being reborn in the situation where we are right now, still grasping. We have to realize reality. But it's just an interlude. Okay? If you want to know more, you have to do an intro course with texture. So, looking at these three ways of how ignorance distorts our view of reality, when we really think about this, we can come to the conclusion, there's a perception error going on here. Okay? There is something going on. We are having, it's like alarm, perception error, an error in the system here. We perceive things, things appear in one way, whereas they actually don't exist like that at all. Okay? But we always believe the wrong appearance. We run after things, it's permanent, it's totally satisfactory, it's totally self, I, mine. That is the troublemaker. Okay? So first, we need to think about this deeply, one by one. Reading the sutras, reading what the Buddha taught, reading the commentaries by these various masters, thinking about that. Everything else on the path to enlightenment basically revolves around overcoming this, overcoming ignorance. Which is to say, the Buddha said, we need to correct our view. No one else can do it, It's not that the Buddha will do it. It's not that I'm going to sit here and do prayers and say, oh, Buddha, please correct my view. Please free me from ignorance. The Buddha said, what are you talking about? I cannot free you from ignorance. You are also part of the equation. You have to do it yourself. I can simply show you how to do it. Right? The famous quote from the Buddha, I cannot wash away your obscurations with water for you. I cannot transplant my realizations into you. It doesn't work like that. I'm very sorry. If I could, I would do it. If the Buddhas could do it, there's many Buddhas, not just one, by the way. If these enlightened beings could do it, since they have incredible compassion, endless compassion as sentient beings, we would all be enlightened by now. No problem. We would bliss out, They would do it for us. No problem. You don't have to pay for it. They do it for free. There's nothing else they want but us to be awakened beings and be free from suffering. But they can't do it on their own. They are limited by our karma, so to say. They can just point the finger and say, hey, this is what needs to be done. This is how I did it. This is how you can do it too. But you have to make the effort. So we have to think about this. We have to check, is this actually valid or not? Does this make sense or not? and then start to correct our mistaken view if we want to be really happy. We have to see how things actually are. And this is what is meant by, in Buddhism, when we talk about cultivating wisdom. Okay? Cultivating the wisdom that sees things clearly for the purpose of ultimate happiness of all sentient beings. And that is not something magic, or it just means to see the opposite of the red things. We have to turn the red into the green. We have to see that which is changing is changing. We have to accept it. The Buddha called it, all compounded phenomena are impermanent. We need to realize it. We have to see that which is not in the nature satisfactory is not satisfactory. It's just how it is. The Buddha called it, all contaminated phenomena are unsatisfactory. We have to see where there is no self. There is no self. There is no inherent self. Okay? The Buddha called it, all phenomena are empty and selfless, dependently arisen. Once that is realized, nirvana is peace. These are what are called the 4 seals of Buddhism. When the question arises, what makes you a Buddhist? I want to be a Buddhist. How can I become a Buddhist? There's 2 ways of how to become a Buddhist. We talk about a Buddhist by conduct and a Buddhist by view. Okay? A Buddhist by conduct is somebody that takes refuge in Buddha, Dharma and Sangha as their guide, without necessarily knowing about all of this very well, but you just entrust yourself to the Buddha. I think what you said is really incredible. I'm going to follow this, and I have total faith in Buddha, the Dharma that you taught, and the Sangha that practices that. I have total faith. I take refuge in you. That actually makes you become a Buddhist. But when we talk about being a Buddhist by view, Buddhist by conduct, we just talked about, a Buddhist by view is somebody who accepts the 4 seals. Somebody who really accepts compounded phenomena are impermanent, contaminated phenomena are unsatisfactory, phenomena are empty and selfless. This realization will lead to perfect peace. Is what the Buddha taught. Okay? Alright, I think this is enough from my side. I know it's a little bit much for this afternoon, but I couldn't resist. So I don't really get the opportunity much anymore to come up here, because the Tibetan program is quite intense, so I cannot spend much time here. So I packed everything I want to say into 1 hour and 25 minutes. But now, if you still have some energy, if you have any questions about anything, what we talked about here, or something that comes up, please feel free to ask questions, and I'll try to answer them, if there are questions. Yeah, in the back, yeah.
Just small question first from the, I think, around the beginning part, that when we say ignorance is actively misknowing or misperceiving. Can I say ignorance is not caring?
Not caring? I would say that ignorance and not caring are not necessarily the same, but due to ignorance, due to not seeing things clearly, not caring arises.
So, not caring is just one small thing under ignorance umbrella?
Well, not caring would be an outcome of ignorance. There's different forms of not caring, right? For example, another sentient being is suffering. I don't care. Why do I not care? I don't care because I do not see that this sentient being has something to do with me. It appears to me that there's a sentient being totally disconnected from me. This sentient being is suffering. Well, what does it have to do with me? I don't care. I have my own stuff going on. When you really, that's what ignorance is doing. It creates that separation, right? It is, well, I'm over here, you are over there. We are independent from each other. That's what ignorance kind of perceives. When you have wisdom, you see all sentient beings are interconnected. This living being, and me, we are interconnected. Automatically, through the wisdom that sees interdependent co-arising, interdependent connection, care arises. Love arises. Isn't it? And I think it's actually a very good point and an incredibly beautiful thing. The Buddha said, in one of the sutras, the Buddha said, the wisdom of emptiness, or in other words, the wisdom of dependent origination, because these are the same, two sides of the same coin. Things do not have an inherent self. That's why they are interdependent. When we understand interdependence, that is like the womb of compassion. Then automatically I see, wow, I care for others. Because we are in this together, there is no inherent separation between us. We are part of one human family, one global family, one universal family. When you suffer, that makes me suffer. How can I be happy when other sentient beings suffer? So caring arises, and that is the path of the Bodhisattva, wanting to become a fully awakened being in order to benefit others, realizing we are all interconnected. Yes. Welcome.
Can I ask more questions?
I think so. 2 more, maybe 1?
Okay.
As you like.
So, I guess when you say you cannot change anything but your mind, is it?
Well, I kind of said that, but that's not totally what I meant. You can change some things. It's just when the pizza place is closed, you can't really change it. So I think we'll have to repeat the questions for the online people. You didn't finish your question, but let me just jump in there. When we say we cannot change anything but our minds, that's not necessarily true. We can change things. We have influence, and we should change things. If you can make a change in the external situation, we definitely should. If suffering arises, if conditions happen that are unfair, that are not okay, where you say, this is not in order, I have to change something about this. If you can, we should definitely do it, as best as we can. But some things we can't change. Some things arise, boom, like an avalanche, they happen, right? And you want to change things, but you notice, I cannot change. I did my best, I can influence it a bit, but I cannot transform the situation. Then, in order not to emotionally crash and think, I cannot change it, and we get completely depressed and caught up in that problem, we have to change our attitude towards the problem. That's what I meant.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
It's more.
Okay.
It's called surrender.
Surrender.
Yeah.
I don't see the word surrender much in any Buddhist texts or any terminology, but I think we can. Surrender to how things are, and surrender to what we can do and what we can't do. Which is not a sense of giving up, but it's a sense of letting go what can't be changed in order not to run out of energy by trying and trying and trying over there and never being able to change anything, and therefore crushing ourselves. We're saying, I cannot change it over there, I have to change it maybe over here, from there. Maybe not now, but maybe soon. And then indirectly we can influence. Surrendering to the fact that we can only do so much. And then being able to understand, in order to be able to do more, I have to first work here. Yes, welcome, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, pleasure, thank you. Yeah.
Wangdu, can you cover, talk a little bit more about grief? Because I think when we lose someone, that is permanent.
Well, that person not being there anymore will not be reversed. That is true. But then, that situation of a particular person not being there anymore in your heart is also a dependent process. That person is not there anymore, that is true. It is just for us to see, why are we so completely overwhelmed? Okay, first of all, grief is an important thing to go through, I guess. Grief is not something that we want to get rid of and say, well, it's fine, it's just the nature of reality, it's impermanent, fine. it's, we are grieving, and the grieving process, I think, is healthy. Right? Certain states of sadness can be very healthy, and we go through them. But this way of going through it is not a static thing. And we are not forced to be in a static situation of sadness and inability to keep going with our lives when we lose someone. In other words, if we were able to see someone who is still alive in a way of saying, now we are together, now we are here, this is not permanent. If you can relate to others from the very beginning with a realization of impermanence, then the moment of having to depart or being separated will be different, at least. Not completely free from sadness or anything, but much different. Because we can actually maybe even use it as an opportunity of being grateful and full of the love and offering that to ourselves, others, and people around us. I saw a very beautiful interview about grief by Nick Cave. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, know the band? He lost his 2 sons. Again, it's an unimaginable thing for me to put myself into the situation of what it would mean to lose your children. 1 child, 2 children. It's unbelievable. But it was incredible to hear how he talked about it. And he said, we are creatures of loss. This is what we are. Which is a very beautiful analogy actually to what the Buddha said. Loss is in the very fabric of what we are due to impermanence. When we can appreciate that fact that this is not something wrong that we lose, but it's in our nature that we will need to lose, then that grieving process and that letting go and that being separated can, instead of being something that crushes us and makes us unable to do anything, or whatever it puts us into to become tight, it can be an opportunity for inner growth and true realization and therefore appreciation of the nature of life, which is change. Doesn't mean it's easy or fixed and it's fine, but it's truly being in touch with how things are. And that gives rise to an incredible resource of compassion and love, because everyone experiences it, losing others. In that we are all the same. We lose the people we love. All of us, don't we? So can we transform that into a trigger, an inspiration for love and openness and embracing it while going through that grieving process? If we can do that, it becomes so worthwhile. It's just my take on it. I think we have people in the back who did before, sorry.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for the beautiful teaching.
Welcome.
My question is about the third type of ignorance, self.
No self.
No self. So I have a difficulty kind of reconciling this concept with the notion of sort of personal responsibility. So I feel like I'm responsible for gaining more wisdom, more compassion in my actions and all of those things. And yet, who is that I? Or is there my responsibility even? So can you talk more about that?
Okay, I think the question is, when we talk about no self, there being the concept of no self, while comparing it with still saying it's my responsibility to free myself from suffering. How can I have a responsibility if I don't even exist? That's a contradiction. Well, the point is, we're not saying that you don't exist. We're just saying the way how we as persons exist is very different from how we usually grasp it. Let's put it in that way. When you talk about there is no concrete, I talk about myself, Wangdu here, right? If I have a very concrete notion of who I am, how others perceive me, and I go to bed at night, I think this is who I am, and tomorrow this is who I am, we have this grasping at a true self, a true Wangdu-ness within me, right? This can become a cause for very, very strong nervousness, very strong, fears, and disappointing myself and having great expectations towards myself and what will other people think and my parents and my family and my partner, and we're living in a state of shakiness because I have to perform it in that particular way. It all comes from very strong grasping. And then often we don't have control over what we can or cannot do because we are influenced by other things. Things suddenly just happen, other thoughts arise. I failed in this, I tried my best, but I failed. Not. If you try your best but you don't succeed, a lot of suffering comes up, and you think like, that's the thing, I should have done it better. All this I, based on this view of a concrete self, actually limits our capacity to truly take responsibility over ourselves. If that makes any sense. If you can see, okay, Wangdu does exist, but I'm a fluent situation. I am influenced right now from what happened in the past. In Buddhism, we go so far to say what happens to me right now is the ripening of past karma, actions I did many lifetimes ago even, which are now imprints in my mind, which come up, right? And anything could happen at any time, but I'm also able to develop myself. I can change, right? I'm not a fixed self, I can evolve, I can change, I can work on myself because there is no inherent self. The very possibility of change for the better, you see, I can develop myself towards something more beautiful is because I'm not fixed. You think, no, I'm fixed. Then why would I try anything? And sometimes you feel like that, right? Or why should I bother about thinking about my mind? Because I'm like that anyway. I tried so many times, it never works. Well, you can change. It's just a matter of, discipline and effort and right methods and the right conditions coming together. Right? So therefore, a seed can evolve into a flower. If the seed says, I am a seed, this is what I am. Don't you water me and think I can become a sprout. No, an oak. What is it? An acorn, right? It's like, I am an acorn, a truly existent self. It's like, well, there is an acorn there, but that's a momentary situation. As soon as conditions change, an oak tree can arise, a huge oak tree that gives shade and under which you can achieve enlightenment, like the Buddha, right? That you can become, due to not self. You see that a bit? What not self means here. So still I can think, I have a responsibility to make a positive change, while at the same time not grasping at me being something fixed. In this way, things become fluent, you do the best you can, sometimes you fail. Doesn't matter, I try again, I'm fluent, I'm not fixed. Oh, I'm a failure, self-grasping. Forget it, drop it. No, I'll try it again, and again, and again. If you change your attitude, maybe you have had this experience, suddenly you think about the situation differently, everything appears differently. And you're so inspired, and you start again. This is how you take responsibility, or how you are able to take responsibility once you let go of grasping at fixedness. This is what is meant by selflessness while still being, and therefore becoming enlightened due to that realization. Something like that. You get my point, I think. You choose. Okay, sure, yeah. Maybe, 2 or 3 more, and then we take a break. I think we can break also. Online question. Okay.
Is there a danger when you indulge too much into Dharma, in terms of intellectually, that you won't have this wisdom of direct experience? If you get my point?
Yes. The question probably is there a danger if we indulge too much in Dharma on the intellectual level that we are not able to actually get a direct experience? Yes. I mean, the fact is, intellectual understanding is not enough. Intellectual knowledge is important, it is necessary. To get something intellectually is actually, especially in the Gelugpa tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, is used as a very necessary stepping stone for direct realization. That you, first of all, we talk about these wisdoms of, first of all, hearing these ideas, making first contact, that you think about them, you learn about them from many different angles, you get a really solid intellectual understanding about something, right? That you really know it, but then that intellectual understanding alone is not potent enough to really change your way of viewing things as such. We know many things intellectually, right? I think every one of you, whoever I look at, I'm sure you are an expert in some kind of field of experience that you know about very well, right? But often, just knowing something, not only that it is not enough, it can actually hinder us from going to the next step and saying, okay, now I have to put what I've learned into practice and really get it from the head, intellectual level, down to the heart level. Because think, oh, I'm such a great scholar, I know it all, I can debate everyone, and I know Buddhist philosophy, and I can give talks, and nobody can beat me in debate, and so what? Right? You become Smarty Pant of the Year. Who does benefit from that? Nobody really. We can get distracted by that. If we then don't go further and say, okay, now I bring all this intellectual understanding from the head to the heart by meditation, deeply meditating and deeply ingraining it in here, then there's a problem here. That is true. So how do we go about that problem? We have to find a good balance, right? I mean, that's how I try to do it, how my teachers told me to do it, and how the advice of Lama Zopa Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe is. It's like, sometimes in this tradition, it's, especially in the Gelugpa tradition, where we study for 25 years in the monasteries to become geshes, which is the Buddhist equivalent of a PhD in Buddhist philosophy. They are studying day in and day out, and they become absolute experts, perfect scholars, right? And often the attitude can be there to think, while I'm not really meditating at all, I'm just studying. It can become like a sport, You can get also addicted to that a bit. It's like, this is so great, you study more and more and more, bam, 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 bam. While at the same time, you are a totally unkind person. Can happen. I'm not saying that the monks or nuns are that. I'm just saying the danger is there, that instead of that intellectual knowledge really softening your heart and creating the conditions for you to be really compassionate and loving and understanding, it can sometimes do the opposite, that you don't care about anybody because they don't know as much as you do. So that is very dangerous. It can happen, right? So therefore, we do study. We spend some time in study. Then we go on retreat. We try to put it into practice. We try to meditate on what we've understood. Try to gain a taste of it. We have to taste the chocolate, Lama Zopa said, Lama Yeshe said. You have to taste it. Then you get really inspired. Oh yeah, this is actually really true. I can test it. I sit with it. You have to take time and space. From that inspiration you study further. Study. Then go to retreat again. So Lama Yeshe would say, once a year, you should at least for once go into a 10-day retreat to put into practice what you have learned in that year, so to say. Then you keep a good balance, step by step by step. So both are necessary. The hearing, the contemplation, the intellectual realization, and then with that intellectual realization, getting into a direct experience of the subject, which is the only thing that can really permanently remove obscurations, is a direct experience of reality. Intellectual is not enough, but necessary. Yeah?
Thank you.
Okay. Maybe one more in here, and then one online also. And then tea. I think here, yeah. Also,
Hello.
Hi.
You.
Welcome.
So I'm still learning some of the terminology
Sure.
in this tradition, so I might use some different words. I think it's called Rigpa, sort of the innate essence of the mind.
Mm.
And in the West it's kind of called maybe presence or stillness or beingness.
Mm.
And if I look at my experience, it seems like some ineffable sort of silence has always been there.
Mm.
Like if you took a Venn diagram overlap of every moment I've ever had, maybe that would be the piece where they all come together. And my question is that permanent? Is it not permanent? I don't want to say it's what I am, because we don't need to put another concept on it, but I'm just confused here, because it seems like it doesn't change. I can't really grow it. I can't get rid of it.
Uh-huh.
And just, how does this tradition...
Okay, it's a big question. So, the term Rigpa is mainly to be found in the Nyingmapa and Kagyu traditions of Tibetan Buddhism. We have 4 traditions in Tibetan Buddhism: the Nyingmapa, the Kagyu, the Sakyapa, and the Gelugpa. Tushita Meditation Center and is part of the Gelugpa tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, where the term Rigpa is not so much used as such. When we talk about the nature of the mind, we can talk about 2 kinds of the nature of the mind. We can talk about the conventional nature of the mind. We can talk about the ultimate nature of the mind. The conventional nature of the mind is defined as, simply put, that which is clarity and awareness. That which is clear and knowing is the conventional nature of consciousness. Meaning that the mind is by its very nature clear, which basically means the mind is not physical. That's basically what it means. The mind is not a physical phenomenon. It is not in any way material. It is clarity in nature. And it has its function to be aware, to know, to perceive. Okay. That in itself is a very neutral state. We're not here talking about liking it or not liking it or perceiving it like this or like that. We're simply talking about the basic nature of the mind. What the mind is clarity in nature and knowing in its function. Fire is hot in its nature and it burns in its function. Fire is hot and burning. That's a definition of fire in Buddhism, by the way. The mind is clear and knowing. Okay. Conventional nature of the mind. When we talk about, so the conventional mind is impermanent. Okay, we have now every one of us has a stream of consciousness going on at the moment that makes us alive, right? If there's a body here without a stream of consciousness in the body, we are basically like a corpse. It is the mind, consciousness, which makes you alive and a living being, so to say. Your stream of consciousness, according to the Buddha, has existed far, far before this life and will continue after this life. While it happens right now, moment to moment, as you listen to me, your mind is understanding, with your hearing, with your ear consciousness, you're getting some understanding. There's change going on, right? From moment to moment. It is always clear and knowing, but there is change in a continuity going on. It's impermanent. Impermanent here meaning momentary, okay? It doesn't mean, oh, it's temporal and one day it will go out of existence. Your mind will never go out of existence. But that doesn't make it permanent. Okay, we have different things going on here. Permanent and eternal are not the same. Impermanent and temporal are also not the same. Which is to say, you can have something which is eternal, going on forever, but impermanent. For example, your stream of consciousness goes on forever while being impermanent. Right? So, just to leave it there. Conventional nature of the mind. The ultimate nature of the mind is that the mind is empty of inherent existence. The mind lacks any form of self-existence. It is a dependent arising. The emptiness of the mind is permanent. So now you have to figure out something with that in your particular way of thinking about it, because I cannot answer your question, I think, otherwise I can just give you that. And then you check in your meditation when you are trying to identify and rest in the nature of your mind, let's say. Is it a permanent experience or impermanent? Can there be something like a permanent experience? The one that is knowing, okay, you're meditating, right? So you meditate on what you experience. Thoughts arising and passing, right? All the time. But you are not your thoughts. Clouds through the sky, impermanent thing. But you go deeper and there's something behind these thoughts, which is like the sky-like awareness that knows that there are thoughts. Right? We have that which is known by the mind and that which knows. Right? Right now, what is known by your mind is my face talking to you all the time. But you can switch awareness and think, what is it that knows that? Right? Is that permanent or impermanent? You check.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I get one more quick one?
Sure.
So I'm curious a path to enlightenment or like the path? And I think another way of asking that is like, do you think there's anybody in the world that has never heard of Buddhism or Buddha or anything like that and has reached the Buddha state of enlightenment? You know?
The Buddha didn't teach Buddhism.
Okay.
Right? The Buddha teach to Buddhists, because there were not any there, right, at the Buddha's time. The Buddha taught basically Brahmins, right? The Buddha taught people who did not believe in Buddhism, or believe in Buddhism is even the wrong word. My answer to the question is, are there many paths to enlightenment, or is there the path to enlightenment? It depends who you ask, I guess. But whatever you do, if you are able to realize a way of how to overcome ignorance, and develop the wisdom that realizes these things, then that will lead you to liberation and enlightenment, no matter what you call it. The Buddha really didn't care about branding at all. He couldn't care less. All he cares about is that you are able to free yourself from suffering. How? By identifying suffering's cause. So the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, right? He said, there is suffering, the truth of suffering. We're experiencing dissatisfaction in various ways all the time. But that comes from a cause. It's not randomly there. The truth of origin, he called it. Number 2. Suffering arises from a cause. Okay. When I want to get rid of suffering, I have to remove the cause first. I have to uproot it. Otherwise, I'm just cutting the branches here and there, but the root is still there. I have to uproot it. For that, I have to know the cause. Otherwise, I cannot uproot it. I go to my garden and uproot different things. That's where the seed is. I have to uproot that. If you uproot the cause, there can be a cessation. A stopping of suffering. Third noble truth. The truth of cessation. How? By practicing the right methods that lead to that cessation. The right tools, the right awareness, the right methods that uproot the cause. The path to enlightenment. Fourth noble truth. Very practical. Right? So it's like if you're sick, you have a sickness. You go to the hospital because you want to get rid of the sickness. You listen to the doctor, you take the medicine, you overcome the sickness. Right? Or the doctor says, the cause of your sickness is you had food poisoning. You have to take this medicine. Oh, cool, I take this medicine, I practice the path, I'm overcoming my food poisoning. Exactly the same way the Buddha said, you are suffering because there is ignorance. You can get rid of any suffering if you remove ignorance and develop compassion for living beings and develop yourself in the path. That's it. If you call this Buddhism or not Buddhism, well, it doesn't really matter, right, the labeling. But this is what the Buddha discovered, how it works. The Buddha didn't invent the law of cause and effect. But he observed it and said, okay, this is how things come together, causes and conditions. So I want to practice the causes for enlightenment by overcoming the causes of samsara. That's how I achieve freedom. And this is what I teach to you, the Buddha said. The Buddha said, I don't teach anything but suffering and the overcoming of suffering. That's my teaching. You don't have to believe me, you try it out. If it's successful for you, so great, I love it. If not, well, fine. Cool, no? I think it's cool too. Yeah, it's pretty cool actually. Yeah. Okay, we have 5 more minutes. Should we have one more online question? So sorry, my dear online people.
From a Buddhist point of view, how does purpose come into all of this? How does one connect with that purpose?
How does purpose come?
Into all of this?
Into all of us.
All of this.
All of this.
And how one connects with their purpose?
And from the Buddhist perspective, how does purpose come into all of this? And how do we connect to our purpose? Well, purpose. What is purpose? What is the meaning? I think the purpose is what you make of things. I don't know if we all have the same purpose. But when we talk about purpose in Buddhism, we come back to this very basic foundational observation that I've started this talk with, which is my main purpose as a living being is I want to be happy. I want to be peaceful. I want to be flourishing and thriving and connecting with others and causing them to flourish and thrive and live together happily and beautifully and be free from what causes me suffering. Right? This is kind of a main purpose that we all have, isn't it? I mean, that's the most basic thing. Anything on top of that is individual. My purpose is to do this because I want to be happy. My purpose is to do that because I'm happy in that way. But the basic thing is happiness and freedom from suffering. And this is what the Buddha taught. So on the basis of that, I guess, we check how are we individually doing that. Because we are not all the same. We are different people. We have different styles probably, right? Not everything works for everybody. Not everyone might have the same purpose, so to say. And the Buddha was so great, you know why? Because the Buddha didn't teach the same thing to everyone. The Buddha gave this incredibly wide range of teachings and methods that suited particular people in a particular way, wherever they were in their particular path, to help them find the path within their purpose, so to say. So it's very, very open. And this is what I have to say about this. How do we find our purpose in life? I think we have to really take time to sit without distracting ourselves for a longer period of time, and then listening to our heart and thinking, what is it that I really wish for? What is what I truly want? And then listen to that, our heart, very, very carefully. And then maybe glimpses of purpose can arise. I think this idea of I found my purpose is a little bit expecting too much. Glimpses can come, and then you follow these glimpses, and then they lead you to other things. And maybe you end up somewhere where you think, here I can be truly beneficial, here I can truly help sentient beings, here I can fulfill my purpose. I can only talk about my own experience. I think the most wonderful thing that there is to find a way of how to liberate yourself from your own psychological problems and emotional suffering and emotional neurotic stuff in your own mind, to free your heart from that, to then be able to help others and be kind in the world and bring beauty and love and happiness into the world professionally. Not just, yeah, it's all right, let's do it. But like, what is the cause for suffering? How can we remove it? How can I live my life in accordance with that? And then try to share it with others. I don't know, maybe that's my purpose. And I think your purpose might be a little bit similar, but different. Same, but different. But that's how can we become a beautiful, flourishing, wonderful, open human being and benefiting others as best as possible, that we have to find out for ourselves. And for that we need to listen. First, well. Okay, I think we have to go. 1 minute. 1 minute question? 1 minute? Quick. I think we were 2 hours already in here. I think we'll have to stop. Because I would also like to use 1 minute to just dedicate the positive energy we have created by being together here this afternoon. This is a very important thing that we have in our tradition here, is that when we do something beautiful, something virtuous, something that is actually beneficial, like talking about these things and reflecting on them and creating this positive energy, then we created something very powerful. We call it merit in Buddhism, a powerful positive energy, positive potential. And in order for that not just to go to waste, and when we leave this room, it's very important to dedicate that positive potential, especially on a day like today, where the positivity is so much, multiplied so much. So let's just think, just for a short minute in silence, may whatever positive potential we have accumulated by thinking about the Dharma together, may all of this be sent out into the world, that all living beings who don't have the opportunity to reflect like this may benefit from this positive energy. May all living beings be able to have happiness and the causes of happiness. And may all living beings be able to free themselves from suffering and the causes of suffering, so they may truly flourish. And may our talk here and our being together here become a cause for that. We send it out to others. Without keeping it, we send it into the world and think, may all of you have it, experience it. May all of you become fully free and happy. We think like that just for 1 minute in silence. Thank you very much for coming in this afternoon. So great to see you. Please take good care out there in the real world. Okay. Please take good care.